Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's ClaritySoft webinar. This week's webinar is on leveraging Excel reports. So our goal today is to do a somewhat short webinar to give you a quick introduction and help you build or learn how to build an Excel report that uses a pivot chart and a pivot table. So we'll quickly do an overview of Excel reports and what they're capable of doing. And then we're going to build a leads report. And in that leads report, we're going to compare lead source to lead quality so that we can say, well, for each type of lead source, what kind of quality leads did we get? So if we did an email campaign, what percentage of good, average, bad leads did we get for doing the email campaign as a lead source? So we're going to build that, and I think once you're done, it makes a nice looking chart and gives you some good data. The process you follow with your Excel reports is you first of all create your foundation template. And then once you've created that template, which can include formulas that you put into it, in this case it's going to be the pivot chart and pivot table. Once you've created that and you've got your formulas working and everything is set up, you take that template and you upload it to ClaritySoft. And then once the template is uploaded, then you can run the report from there. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm looking at my leads module here in my demo database, and I have different lead sources. You can see the different lead sources here. And then I have qualities of good, average, bad. You can have different ones in your database. You obviously can have different lead sources as well. Now, the other limits that you could set on your report when you're setting it up would be, I want to know all of the lead sources versus leads quality for a span of creation date time. If you notice, my records here were all created on December 12th of last year because this database was created on that day. So I would not do that, but you could certainly do that, or you could put them for, any other custom fields in your leads module that you want to filter on. So just want to think about, what do I want to pull in out of my leads module? I only have 128 records. You might have 4,000 or 5,000 or more. So, you can think about the limitations you want to put on it when you build your Excel report. So first of all, look at your data that you have in your module where you're going to pull the data from and decide what you want to do. Then you go to Excel reports. And in Excel reports, I want to create a new folder. So I can click the new folder button, and I'm just going to call this Susan Webinar Reports. I can enter a description if I want and save it. So ClaritySoft has now created a folder for my report or any reports that I want to save there. So then the next step is to click on New Excel Report. And it defaults to wanting to put it in this 2018 reports folder. I'm going to click here and choose the folder that I just created. And if you didn't create a new folder before you came to here, notice you still can create one. So you don't have to go back. And then you give your report a name. So I'm going to call this Lead Quality by Lead Source. And then you can put in the description. I'll just put quality versus source. Then you click Save. Now, with Excel reports, and this is what makes them much more powerful than just the reports. In Excel reports, you can have more than one source sheet, meaning you could pull data in from the leads module as one source sheet. Then you could pull data in from activities as another source sheet, or accounts. And so this, in the reports module, when you're creating a report, you may only attach that report to one module at a time. But in Excel reports, you may create multiple source sheets. Now today we're going to do only one, but I promise you that in the future, in the next couple of months, we'll do one where we're going to pull data in from multiple modules, because that is a technique you want to learn. So what I want to pick here is my source type, which would be my list of modules, and I'm going to select leads. And then I can give my source sheet, this will be the data sheet in the Excel file, a name, and I'm just going to call it leads. You can call it anything you want, leads list, whatever. And then I click save. So this is just making the connection. So now we have the source sheet named leads, and I get to pick, well, what columns, what data do I want to pull into the source sheet from the database? So I don't need much here. I'm going to pull in the company name. I'm going to pull in the lead sources field and the quality field. Now you would also have access to your custom fields. Remember, in these lists for reports and for filtering, your custom fields are always at the bottom half. The top half are the ClaritySoft fields, and they are in alphabetical order. So if you don't see your custom fields, just continue to scroll down and you will see your custom fields down there. So they're always at the lower half of the list. All right. Then once I'm over here, I can say, well, I want lead sources first. I want quality second, and then the company name. All right. Then I go to sort columns, and I'm going to say, well, I'd like to sort them first by lead source and second by lead quality. And then the third tab here is setting up your filter criteria. Now, as I said, my data was all created in December, so I have one creation date, which doesn't help me to pull out a group of leads that I might have just imported 2 weeks ago or a week ago or something like that. But you can look at your data, decide, well, what might be a time-based filter that I might want to have. You know, perhaps you choose creation date and you want it to be the last, I'll just say 3 months or something like that. So you can decide what you want here as a filter. And if you also want to include some sort of standard filter on one of your custom fields or something like that, then you can also set that up here. Again, my data is pretty cryptic, so it doesn't really lend itself to having a filter. So I'm going to clear this out. So I'm basically not going to have a filter at all. All right. But you probably would want to set one. Then I click save. So now I have my source sheet called leads, and it's from the leads module. So I can click the back button. Now in our directions online, it will tell you at this point to click on this row action button and download the template. And then you open the template and you set it up and make your changes. But what I've discovered is when you download the template and work with it, it doesn't really pull any data into the report. So when you're creating a pivot chart or you're trying to put in formulas, you're sort of working in a vacuum and you don't know whether what you're doing is working or not. So I'm going to tell you, once you get to this point, to simply click on the report to run it. And then down at the bottom, you'll get your button. So you click on it to open the template. And when you get in here, you first of all need to click Enable Editing and then Enable Content, because this is a macro sheet. And then you're going to say, well, shoot, there's still nothing there. Well, you look down here and you actually have 2 sheets in your workbook. You have sheet 1, which is where you are, and you have the leads sheet, which is the source sheet that you created. So because you ran the report, it's pulling the data in according to the setup and the filters that I put in that source sheet. So you can see here, I've got my 3 columns. It's sorted first by lead source and then subsorted by the quality within the lead source. So all of that worked. And if I go down to the bottom, I should have 128 data rows, which is correct because it's at 130, and up here I have 2 rows up here. So all my data came in the way I wanted it to come in. So now I've got something to work with when I actually build the rest of my template, and I can see what I'm doing. So I could build a pivot chart on the same sheet with the data, but then that kind of makes it messy when I run the report because I'm going to see all this data and I don't necessarily want to. So what I'm going to do is return to sheet 1 and pay attention to where you click this. I'm going to click it up here at B3 because this is where my pivot table will land unless I tell it to land otherwise. So try to remember to click somewhere up here. Then I'm going to go to the Insert menu and click on Pivot Chart, and I want Pivot Chart and Pivot Table. All right, now what you need to do is select the range of data that's going to be pulled into the pivot chart. So I make sure my insertion point is in here, and then I just simply go to the leads sheet, select your column headings. If I stop here at row 130, that means that the next time I run this report, if I have added 100 more records that might be pulled in here, the ones below row 130 won't be counted in the pivot chart. So what you want to do here is you want to extend your range as far down as you think you might need to go. Again, depending on the amount of data that you have, you might need to go down 1,000 rows, 2,000 rows, whatever. So it would be depend upon the kind of filter that you're going to set up, and you know what kind of data might be pulled in. Well, if I go down to row 500, I'm probably fine in my database. So just type a number there. Then here's where the pivot table is going to land at B3. So if you didn't, you want to check that just to make sure it's not somewhere over and down far away. And then click OK. Now I'm going to move these into the pivot table chart area. So I want lead sources is going to be my x-axis for my categories, and quality is going to be my value axis, my series, and quality, when I drag it down here to the values, will become the count of quality, and that's what I want. So now you can see over here a list of all of my lead sources and how many are good, average, good, and bad, and then blank. Now the blank ones are there because I had all those blank rows. So what you can do is click here and uncheck blank to turn those off so you don't get any count of your blank rows. And then you'll notice they also disappear from the chart. So let me make my chart a little bigger here. So I have my chart. I have my average, bad, and good counts per lead source showing. But this is kind of hard to read. So the next thing I want to do is I actually want to make these numbers into a percentage of 100%. So if I right click, then I can go to show values as a percent of parent column total. Then it changes them to percents, and it gives you the grand total of 100%. Now, to get rid of these 2 decimal places, I'm just going to select that, come up here, and make this 0. So that makes that a little less messy looking. Then the chart itself needs some formatting here. So what I want to do with the chart itself is right click and change the chart type. I'm going to make it a bar chart, and I'm going to make it a 100% stacked bar. So now you can see I'm going to get everything stacked on one bar to see my different percentages, and that makes much more sense than the multiple columns or bars. So now I have website, vendor list, trade show. I can see the average quality leads versus the bad quality leads versus the good quality leads for each one. And I can begin to see where my best one is. Now it's a matter of starting to format things, because I don't see the percents that are over here in the chart, and I'd really like to be able to see that. So basically, you point to one of your elements here and you right click, and then you say add data labels, add labels, and it sticks them in. Now they're kind of hard to read, so hold on a second. Right click, add my data labels. Then if I click on these, it will select all of them, and I can come up here and make my font color white, which is easier to read. I could also change my bar colors, but I kind of like those colors, so I'm going to leave them. If I want to format my labels here, then I can select this, and then I can come up here to my font and set whatever size font I want, and then I could make it bold. So you just begin to format your chart. Then over here on the far right, there's a plus sign to look at the different chart elements and turn them on or off. And I want to turn on the chart title, and then I can set my title. And you could put in, if you put in a data restriction, like in the last 3 months or something like that, you could include that in your title, so you know that that's what the chart is showing you. So whatever you set up as your filter criteria, you could include in the chart. And then again, you can format this if you want. Probably can select the whole thing and do it. Make it bigger, make it bold. So basically, you're building your entire template right now. Once you have it all formatted, all set up the way you want, then we want to save it as the template. Now, before I save it as the template, though, I want to get rid of the data, because I don't want the data in the template. So I'm going to go back here, click on the leads. Now again, this is going to look empty, but remember, you were dragging down. So just do Control Home to go back to the beginning. And then you're going to select your data that got pulled in and hit Delete to clear it. Then when you go back to your chart, it's going to blank out, which is what you want. You want now just an empty template waiting for data. So now I'm going to do a save as, and then these are be in your downloads folder. So what you want to do is create a folder somewhere on your computer or your network where you're going to save these templates that you create. I've got a folder right here. So I'm going to call this lead quality by lead source, should be good. And I save it. Okay, now I can close the file, and then I come back here, and now I'm going to click on this row action button and say upload template. And this is the one that I want. Click open. It will tell you that it saved it successfully. And now my report is ready to run. So I can click on this now, and it's going to pull in the data. So again, whenever you run it, you'll enable the editing, and you'll enable the content, and there it is. And your data will be on the leads sheet. So it's always going to run, it'll show you, and you have your pivot table and everything there. So that's a real quick way to make a nice chart. Now, if you wanted to do just the pivot table and not see this, you could do that and have just the pivot table. The other thing, just so you know how this works, now this is just an Excel file now, so I could take this and I could do a save as and save it anywhere. It doesn't become my template. This is the result. This is the report. So I can save it. I'm just going to close it for now because I can run it anytime. Now, the next step, once you have this working, is to perhaps schedule this. So under the row action button, you have schedule. And then you can say how often do you want it to recur, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. So let's say you wanted this to run once a week. Maybe you only need it to run once a month. You just want to find out how you're doing every month on the lead quality to give people time to contact the leads and do something with them. So if you chose once a month, you can say repeat every 1 month, every 2 months, every 3 months, whatever you want to do, when to start it, when to end it, and then what file type do you want it to download to? Do you want it to go to a PDF, an Excel, or a CSV file? So I'm going to take it to Excel, and then down here, you enter the email address or addresses that you want this to send to. Now, if you're sending to more than one person, you need to separate it with a comma and then the next email address. I think you can also put a space in. But normally, like in Outlook, it's a semicolon, but in here it is a comma. So you can send it to multiple people. So now Linda and I should receive this once a month. Let's say I'm going to start this Thursday. So both of us should receive this report starting on Thursday and then save it. So once you schedule something, it shows a little clock there that indicates to you that it's scheduled. So that's how you can create a beginning sample type of report with your leads quality and your lead source to create that 100% stacked bar chart. Thanks for attending. It's always good to see a good crowd and have you coming back each week for more ideas on how to do things. If you need any help with anything, you know you can always contact our support at 888-838-7487 extension 2 or email them at support@claritysoft.com.